Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Azeroth Daily for the 2nd of February 2011. My name is TotalBiscuit, bringing you your daily dose of WoW news and comment. In the headlines today, there is a contest available on the US Battle.net website, but it has a very short timer on it, folks, so you're going to have to be quick about this one. There are some prize packs available from SteelSeries and Jinx for screenshots of dungeons. So all you need to do is send in a screenshot of your most amazing dungeon crawl moment all the way over to the Blizzard website, and you stand a chance of winning a prize pack. Bear in mind, though, the closing date for this was February 4th. You might think that I was a little late on this, but it was only announced on the 31st of January. So, not so much. They're just being ridiculously quick for it. I have no idea why, but there you go. You can enter that if you happen to be in the US. Speaking of contests, those of you in the EU might be pretty happy to hear that the Authenticated contest has been extended to EU folks as well. In this case, however, the contest is a little bit different, and they have a wide variety of things you can do, including in-game screenshots of World of Warcraft or StarCraft 2, sketches of characters, digital photos of real-life depictions of account or character protection, dioramas, and statues. There's all sorts of things you can actually do there, so you can enter that, and there are iPads on offer every month for the best entries. Bear in mind, however, there are some countries that cannot participate, and this is not because Blizzard are racist, as some idiots have claimed. It's because of local competition laws in particular nations, and you might want to go and have a look at the rules before putting something together. Somebody over on MMO Champion has managed to figure out the actual rotation of the Harvest Wormbreaker ads. Apparently it is not random, and what you're seeing right now is the table of exactly when particular ads will pop up. I'm not entirely sure just how useful this will be, but there you go, folks. It is actually determined by weeks and times as opposed to a complete random element to it. The latest round of community news is out for the EU, including Polish site wowcenter.pl, which is listing places to go if you need Blizzard support in Polish, as well as the Turkish site wow-tr that's written a lore article on King Magni Bronzebeard. All this a roundup of the week's comics and noteworthy forum threads available in the description below this video. And with that, it's time for your Daily Blues. Now, Locked Thread presents an essay from Ysandra on apparently how the game is too hard and she doesn't like that. Because the laundry list of complaints is so generic, and you've probably seen something very similar to this 1,000 frickin' times before, I'm going to skip directly to the blue post, which is perhaps the only thing of value in this 289-page thread. This comes in from Zarhym, and it is an absolutely fantastic post, I might add, pointing out that just because this person happens to be a paying customer does not mean she gets to get away with ad hominem attacks and insult, as well as claiming that Ghostcrawler has personal disdain for her. Oh my god. No, Ghostcrawler, 1, doesn't know who you are, 2, doesn't care who you are, and 3, is just trying to do his job. At the end of the day, there are 12 million players, not 1, in order to cater to. It is a very lengthy post. I would highly recommend that you actually read it, and many people said it should be stickied. I must agree, and I do approve of this very forward approach by the CMs to actually address some of the entitlement that's going on the forums at the moment. Perhaps a quote for the century, folks. We're done hearing about how you feel what Ghostcrawler said was mean. Oh dear. Do I have to break out the offended quote again? Yes, quite. On a somewhat more positive note, Wayor, over on the EU forums, posts about tanking for the first time, having recently rolled up a warrior, and is looking for some advice and suggestions. He wants to be part of the solution to lack of tanks, but he can also see why there is a problem now. Others don't have the patience, apparently, to let people learn. An interesting point, honestly. Wryxian is able to reply with a little bit of advice, although I just like the fact that the OP is actually so honest about it, really. It's like, hey, I'm gonna try and be part of the solution to the problem, but I can't because people are being unreasonable. I have to wonder if there's anything Blizzard can actually do in order to make that happen, but I will say that this is one of the most positive responses, not only from a blue, but also from some members of the community that I've seen in a very, very long time indeed. So, go and have a read of this thread, it's actually worth having a look at. And with that, it's time for your daily grind. We're continuing along with the Orcus line right here, and let me tell you, he does redeem himself quite a lot as we go through these quests. I'll split this this up and then do the last one tomorrow. There's a couple more, but they're so ancillary it doesn't really matter. But you got this great cutscene right here, and what I do like is the music in the background and the actual environment that you're flying into. Over to Purgation Isle, it genuinely feels creepy and oppressive. I'm a big fan of actually layering on the atmosphere because there are plenty of areas of WoW that simply do not do that. And with that, it's time for your weekly feature. It's the Court of Law. Okay, folks, we're on the third of the 5 new areas available in Cataclysm, and this one is Deepholm. So, Deepholm's exact location is far below the Skywall, and it's a large subterranean continent. It's the realm of the Earth Elementals and their Lord Therazane. It's an area rich in mineral wealth, including some rare jewels not found on the surface of Azeroth. The mineral wealth of this elemental plane, however, is considered the property of Therazane. It's a barren land, and on the whole, it's hostile to life, and only the hardiest flora and fauna may flourish here. The Twilight's Hammer cult are here in great abundance, for this is where Deathwing was nursed back to health. After regaining his strength, Deathwing burst from Deepholm, shattering the World Pillar in the process, which regulates the magnetic forces of Azeroth. Without it, Azeroth will collapse in on itself, and the surface will fall into Deepholm. In order to stabilize the pillar, the Earthen Ring wrestled control of the Temple of Earth back from the Twilight's Hammer, and are now attempting to piece the World Pillar back together. Further conflict between the Alliance and Horde is also on the horizon, as the gunship Storm's Fury appears to have been shot down by the Alliance gunship Lane's Oath. In reality, the ship has been hijacked by the Twilight's Hammer, who once again attempt to stir enmity between the two factions. Within the Temple of Earth lies the Stone Core, a stronghold of Twilight power, who appear to have bent the native elementals and creatures to their will. To them, this is sacred ground. It's the point of Deathwing's ascent into Azeroth, and they will sacrifice themselves willingly and without hesitation in order to preserve it. The lord of this realm is Therazane the Stone Mother, one of the 4 elemental lords of the Old Gods. She's in a constant state of conflict with Ragnaros, Alakir, and Neptulon, and opposes the destruction wrought by Deathwing on the Earth. She is patient and slow to anger, but while apparently far less hostile than the other elemental lords, she still holds a great deal of resentment for mortals who are responsible for the death of her daughter Theradris. She cooperates with the mortals only for as long as she feels necessary. Now, you might wonder why I haven't done a double feature with the Raid or Die segment that was due in yesterday's show that ended up getting cancelled. That's because everything's been cleared now. There's really not a huge amount to discuss. So either Raid or Die is going to have to be adapted, or it's going to have to be replaced with something. So I'm opening the mailbox for suggestions. If you have an idea for a weekly feature you would like to see, bear in mind it does have to happen on a weekly basis, so I can't just burn out of content after 2 episodes. Just bear that in mind. Send it into mailbox@cynicalbrit.com with the subject line suggestion. If it doesn't have the subject line suggestion, it won't get read. So please, by all means, send them in if you have any ideas, and who knows, you might get your feature, well, featured. And with that, it's time for the mailbox. This one comes in from a lad named Mario. It's me, and he says, I recently ran a Baradin Hold Pug where my tier 11 Shaman legs dropped. I rolled and seemingly won, when right before the raid leader counted down to 1, another shaman rolled and beat my roll. However, the raid leader apparently did not notice this since he was counting down quickly and gave me the shaman legs and shortly left the raid. The other guy was starting to rant and began swearing and called us ninjas when I went up to him and traded the pants without saying a word. When I related my story to my guild, they said I was an idiot and I shouldn't have given the pants away since the other guy was being a crybaby, and if I didn't want to keep the pants, I should have just sold them to him. The thing is, I really needed the pants, but I saw that he had fairly won the roll, and that is why I gave him the pants. I also despise people who roll on BOP loot to sell to other people. Did I do the right thing about giving it to him? And while on the subject, how do you feel about players rolling on loot they don't need and then selling it to other players? Well, on the subject of the second element of that, honestly, people who roll on loot they don't need and then sell to other players, that sucks. I mean, most of the time the game prevents you from doing that. If you already have a piece of loot, say a tier or whatever, you usually can't roll on it. In the case of this, well, yeah, I do disagree with trying to sell loot like that. It's need or greed, so if you roll greed, cool. If you happen to, say, get the greed roll and win it on the greed roll, okay, cool. You run it on greed, but if you need it, then you roll need. That's why need greed actually exists. As far as I'm concerned, if you're rolling need on something you don't actually need, then that is actually ninja looting, at least by the vague definition of it. Like I say, ninja looting is a rather nebulous concept at best, but that would be what I'd define it as, certainly. That's bad. As regards to what you did, I mean, it's a very cool thing to do. It's unfortunate that the chances are you wouldn't have got any thanks for it, and people called you an idiot because, yeah, the guy would not have done the same for you. That I can guarantee it. A guy like that, ranting and swearing and calling everybody ninjas and getting really, really annoyed over random loot like that, especially when he didn't roll all the way until the end, which was his fault, let's be honest. If he really wanted those things, he would have rolled straight away. You know, if you wait until the last moment, bearing in mind lag and things like that, yes, the raid leader probably didn't see them and all that kind of thing, then it's your own fault. Personally, if it was a random, if it was a pug, I'd have just taken him, because pugs, you're really out for yourself. I'm sorry. It might sound harsh and people might say, oh, well, you're encouraging bad attitudes, but this is the reality of the situation, folks. I don't have a pie-in-the-sky idea of what a pug is. If you get given an item, and you are given it by the raid leader, who at the end of the day is in control of it, bearing in mind you are not using need-greed rolling, you were using a loot master system, Master Looter had given it to you, then that's the end of it. And yes, the guy would not have done the same in return. The fact that you did it is very noble of you, but in a pug, I don't think it was necessary for you to do that. Anyway, this one comes in from Thomas, who says, hello, TotalBiscuit. I've noticed in a couple of your videos that you very often defended guilds like Paragon, Insidia, and Method when they did controversial kills. You're trying to convince us that they just used some clever game mechanic on a particular encounter. Well, I cannot quite agree with that. In my opinion, they used something that wasn't working correctly, hence they exploited. Why do I say that? Well, the reason is that most of these clever game mechanics were very fast corrected by Blizzard. Now, why would Blizzard fix something that was working as intended? If they fixed or corrected something, it means that it wasn't working properly. An example I can give is the Antramedes fight that many guilds have exploited. The same way as I could defend someone for using the Tolbarad bridge bug, although we all knew it was an exploit, the same could be said about people that are somehow entering closed zones, etc. Do you see my point? For me, if something gets fixed, then it is considered a bug, and someone that used it to his or her profit abused the game. I don't want to flame anyone here, I'm just trying to provide my opinion on the matter. So, here's the thing, you're not talking about bugs here. That is not what a bug is. If anything, that is a balance issue. It's the same thing as we go all the way back to vanilla. There was a debate over the fire resistance buff that you could get by mind controlling mobs in LBRS, and that was considered to be a clever use of game mechanics. It certainly wasn't intended, but they didn't fix it. The difference between an exploit and a balance issue is that you're doing something that would otherwise be completely and totally normal, and yet it happens to be super effective in this particular fight. In the case of the Paragon thing, the reason why it wasn't an exploit is because it was simply raid stacking. The mechanic was in the fight, and at the time it seemed blindingly obvious that you should make use of that particular mechanic by applying all of these dots, so they stacked the raid in order to make that happen. I mean, raid stacking has not been all that common since the Burning Crusade, but it came back with this particular fight. Was it a balance issue with the fight? Yes, the balance issue was corrected. That meant that the fight was unintentionally easy. Was it an exploit to do the fight in that manner? No. No, it was not. Because that was not unusual, bearing in mind the mechanics of the fight. If we're talking, you know, the best comparison, I think, would probably be the whole Lich King thing with Insidia. And I still defend them to this day because we don't actually know what happened there. And yes, using Saronite bombs at the time was a perfectly legitimate DPS increase in regards to rogue rotations. So there's a wide variety of different reasons why that would be legit. But in the case of the actual bug, it was that throwing a Saronite bomb caused part of the ground to come back, and that wasn't supposed to happen. However, here, doing extra damage while in that state, that was supposed to happen. That was designed to happen. That was the way the fight was designed to work at the time, and as it turned out, that was imbalanced, but it was not an exploit. I should probably point out that I've never defended the guys that use the Tramedes line of sight thing, and indeed, yes, that was obviously an exploit because it was obviously not how the encounter was supposed to work, and that's the real distinction there. Is that how the encounter is supposed to work? Well, from looking at the mechanics of the Nefarian encounter, yes, that was how it was supposed to work, and then Blizzard realized, oh dear, actually, this doesn't work at all. That's Blizzard's fault. That is a balance issue. They made the fight too easy. They closed that, they changed the mechanics around so that that couldn't happen, so the fight was then balanced in the way that they wanted. But using the mechanics that were there at the time is not an exploit. That was part of the fight. that was an intended mechanic. The line of sight thing, not an intended mechanic. The reappearing flaw on Lich King Heroic, not an intended mechanic. And that is the point when it becomes an exploit. And that's the distinction you have to make. Okay, folks, I'm done. Thank you very much for watching Azeroth Daily today. My apologies for not having an episode yesterday. I was actually out celebrating the 1-year anniversary of CynicalBrit.com. So once I got home, I was a bit drunk and I was absolutely exhausted. So wasn't able to get anything finished. But thanks for your patience, and I will see you next time.